ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our very first episode of Rank and File, where us nerds are going to go through some of our top lists, top 5s, top 10s, top 20s even, it just depends on how we're feeling today. We're going to start off with a very special topic near and dear to our hearts, top 10 Batman villains. Now, he has an extensive rogue gallery, so we have a lot to choose from, but this is our personal list, so go ahead and list your favorites down below, and without further ado, let's get started with the video.
Alright, so number 10 is Scarecrow, also known as Jonathan Crane. Jonathan Crane is a maniacal doctor. He loves messing with his opponents, and to mess with his victims, he uses what he calls fear toxin. This fear toxin sort of like makes you see things and it scares you. And then he's a psychological villain to Batman because he has a personal vendetta against him.
Right, and that'll come up later where there's different sort of types of villains. So, moving on to our number 9 entry, we have Poison Ivy, also known as Dr. Pamela Isley. And she is just your friendly neighborhood tree hugger. Her primary abilities and attributes are communicating with and cooperating with plants, primarily big scary ones. So, her motivations are not directly tied with Batman. More so, she just wants life to prosper, and she sees humans as more of a disease on Mother Nature. So this makes her a biological villain to Batman, as her goals are separate to, but are often thwarted by the Caped Crusader.
Alright, and number 8 is Ras Al Ghul. Ras Al Ghul is the demon's head. He has access to the Lazarus pit, and he's the leader of he's the leader of the League of Assassins. And if you didn't know, he also trained Batman.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of makes him, since he does have he's the demon's head and he has access to the Lazarus pit, which gives him basically eternal life as long as he can keep returning to it. This makes him above the worldly thresholds, and Batman is just a small part of Ra's long-standing story. So this is going to make him a supernatural villain. Keeping up, though, with the variations, we're going to go back to another one of our favorites, topping off the number 7 entry, Mr. Freeze, also known as Victor Freeze. His primary weapons is his freeze gun, but he also has other cryo weaponry such as grenades, traps, I don't know, anything else ice-themed, Arnold included, if you saw that movie. So, his again, sort of like Poison Ivy, his motivations aren't directly tied with Batman. They're more so finding a cure for his wife who has a rare disease, Nora Freeze, and he himself has a disease where he has to stay at a certain sub-zero temperature. That's why he's in his suit 24/7, is because it keeps him cool. So he is a biological villain with some psychological components, but primarily he's a biological component.
Alright, and keeping on with the pace, number 6 is the Penguin, also known as Oswald Cobblepot. Oswald Cobblepot is a wealthy mobster, and he hates Batman for financial reasons. He what did he do to have Cobblepot just straight up hate him?
Oh, he just probably like arrested him 10 times, messed up a weapons deal, outed his identity to one of his mobsters, like whatever it is, it's just always ruining his business.
Alright, and he's also the very first regional villain. He's human. That's all it is. He's just a very wealthy and very what's the word?
Affluent.
No, like he has strong ties to.
Yeah, he's like a prominent mobster.
Yeah.
Like when we first are introduced to Batman a good Batman story, Batman Year One, where we have like the Falcone family and just these other regional mobsters that aren't dependent on Batman. They're just being Gotham regardless. So you're right, that is more so our first regional villain of the list. But moving on, we have another human villain, although he did have some fucked up shit happen to his face. Oh, by the way, caveat with the last entry, unless you're watching the Tim Burton version, then he's an actual fucking penguin and it makes no sense. But moving on. Rounding out half of the list, we have Two-Face, also known as Harvey Dent. Harvey Dent has this shtick where he flips a damaged $50 piece, and one side is all fucked up and scuffed, and one side's all clean, and that's basically how he decides the fate of his victims. Whether he shoots you or burns you or blows you up, whatever, it's based all on that, and he sticks to that. So even if he fully intended on messing you up, most of the time, he'll stick to the coin. And yeah, he's a DA who was a friend of Bruce Wayne personally, district attorney who was a friend of Bruce Wayne, and had a crazy, accident or whatever that fucked up the whole side of his face, and that psychologically scarred him as well. So because he has those ties to Bruce Wayne, as well as being a district attorney in Gotham, that makes him a regional and psychological villain for our Dark Knight.
The other thing that also messed with his mind was when his girlfriend was also killed in this same act that happened to him.
Yeah, in the Dark Knight movie, Rachel dies when he burns his face, but whatever incarnation you have of Two-Face, whether comics or animated movies, it's always he's a friend of Bruce, and something crazy goes wrong, and there's still a shred of him that trusts Bruce Wayne.
Alright, and number 4 is the Riddler, also known as Edward Nygma. He likes to stage crimes through elaborate riddles, like they can get pretty ridiculous. And he doesn't do his things to hurt people. He has like an obsession for Batman. He likes to test Batman, if you will. And if Batman doesn't come, he just lets his victim go, really.
Most of the time.
And he is both. He is a psychological villain because of his obsession with Batman, and he does sometimes mess with Batman, like Batman's psyche.
Yeah, like he's locked him away in a maze or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, find your way out. Who's the rat now?" And like, oh my gosh, this is like sick storytelling. But the problem with Riddler is you have to kind of be smart to write the Riddler, and most people that are writing aren't. So you got to use your imagination for him to be that good. That's why it's our list. It's not like the top 10 best-selling Batman villain books of all time, or else we'd have a lot. The list would look different. Regardless, we're going to move on to number 3. Before we continue the top 3, go ahead and list your top 3 favorite Batman villains in the comments below. We are topping that off with Zsasz, also known as Victor Zsasz, who is a psychopathic maniac who likes to use close quarters weapons, knives, guns, but short range. He likes to see his victims and have a sort of emotional connection with their death. Also, he makes a physical tally on his body for every victim he has. He's not necessarily worried about Batman. Most of the time, it's just Batman trying to save lives or put him in jail that puts them at odds, but he doesn't really give a shit about him.
Yeah.
Unless he's hired as well, hired by a bigger villain to kill Batman, then he cares about it, but he's not like on his own like, "Oh, I'll get you, Bruce Wayne." So that just makes him more of a regional villain.
Yeah, and Zsasz, he just loves to watch the light die in people when he kills them.
Mm-hmm. Also, in the Gotham television series, it proves that he's a regional villain because he's a villain there, and Bruce Wayne is still just a little kid. So, there's that.
Alright, and number 2 is Clayface, also known as Basil Karlo. Clayface is a failed actor who was supposed to be the star of some horror movie, but he was kicked out of this horror movie for some reason, and it made him go insane. and he tried to kill the entire cast of that horror movie while they were doing the movie, but Batman came in and stopped him. So now Clayface has a personal vendetta against Batman because he stopped his act of revenge. So Clayface is both a biological and psychological villain because he's a psychological villain because he has a personal vendetta against Batman, and he's biological because he has the ability to change his appearance at will.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, moving on to number 1. It's Firefly. No, I'm just kidding. It's pretty obvious at this point. It's Joker, also known as... We don't really know. It depends on your interpretation, and it depends on which book you want to read. So we're just going to put unknown. That's the primary thing. But the most universal accepted backstory for him is the one written by Alan Moore, titled The Killing Joke. And if you haven't watched it, good. You don't need to. Don't worry about it. Go ahead and do yourself a favor. Go read it. And it shows he's a failed stand-up comedian that's struggling to pay bills with a pregnant wife at home. So what happens when some loan sharks come in and say, hey, I think you can do us a favor, we can do you a favor, you know what I'm saying? And he kind of wants to back out at the last minute, but then, like, his wife dies, and he's like, fuck it, might as well just do it. And he's like, my life is, like, meaningless anyways. And then he, like, goes to Ace Chemicals, and they're going to do, like, this heist, but the cops got tipped off, and when the cops are tipped off, usually Batman can show up. So, long story short, Batman shows up when Joker, wearing the monster moniker Red Hood, is at the top of a railing trying to get away, and he can't really see that well, trips over his cape, falls over the railing, falls into a vat of chemicals, which instead of taking his life and killing him, permanently scars his skin and his psyche, turning him into, the clown prince of crime, the Joker. So he's directly tied with Batman in his origin story, as well as he is the antithesis of Batman, to where every day Batman chooses to do the right thing, and for the Joker, all it took was one bad day. So that makes him pretty much Batman's ultimate psychological villain, also rounding out the list and concluding our top 10 favorite Batman villains of all time. So, if you enjoyed that list and would like to see more lists in the future, you can go ahead and share the video with your friends. Leave some comments down below for more ideas for videos or lists you want to see. Was there something you want to say?
Like, subscribe.
Yeah, I was going to say that. So, peace.
I'll just be like,